Hello all and welcome back to my channel. I am Paige, and this week we are doing just a regular old embroidery piece, but we are going to be trying out a couple different things I've never tried before. So if you're interested to see how they turn out, please continue watching. The first thing we're going to be trying out are these Aida cloth canvases. Rather than embroidering with a hoop using the embroidery fabric or just a plain cloth, we have a pre-stretched square canvas with our embroidery fabric already on it. So that's super cool, but I have never tried one before, so we'll see if I prefer the canvas over the hoop. I'd also like to try putting my backing paper on the actual back of this canvas. Usually I put it on the front, but I have seen several people put it on the back because then it's on the back and you don't have to worry about it showing anywhere on the front. Although my backing paper is dissolvable in water, I figured I would try it out to see if this is easier and more convenient for me. And lastly, because the embroidery piece I picked out has some tea involved, it has a glass of tea on it, we are going to be attempting to paint or watercolor with actual tea. A lot of people use tea or coffee to distress paper to make it look kind of old-timey, but I would like to use that slight tea tint to attempt to paint where our tea is supposed to be on the canvas. And if it doesn't work, we'll just resort to watercolors. So we got a couple new things on the docket, but I am excited for this piece, and we are gonna start out with the embroidery. Here I am just cutting out our stencil. When I printed this out, I made sure that it was the proper size to fit my canvas, and we're just gonna peel off the back, stick it to the back of our canvas, as I said, making sure that it's nice and centered, and press down all the way. And as we get into the actual embroidery, these are all stitches that I have already talked about in previous videos, just doing a lot of back stitching and even some French knots in a couple places. Since this piece is a little bit more detailed, I am varying between using 1 or 2 individual strings of embroidery thread. Here is our finished embroidery pieces with our back stitching, and there are our French knots. I left the backing paper on just for some additional support, and also I don't have to because it's on the back. So that's a bonus. And now it is time to add some color. I've got our watercolors over here. This piece to me I'm feeling it to be like messy watercolors. So I think that's how we're gonna do it. And I also have my cup of tea over here steeping when we get to that part. It is now time to use our tea. Don't know how bright the color is gonna turn out, but worst case scenario, if it doesn't show up, we can always go back to the watercolors. well, really didn't have a lot of color to it. I have a feeling if we were to use it, it would probably take several coats. So I think I'm just gonna use this very light brown. I used it for the tea tag. I'm gonna like super dilute it, but we're just gonna add a couple more layers of this color, maybe a couple more layers of tea, so we actually see a color there. Our watercolors are dry, so that means our embroidery piece is finished and it's time to talk about it. First, we're gonna talk about putting our backing paper on the back of the canvas. I think I actually prefer this to putting it on the front, especially when I'm backstitching. I find that I am referencing the back of the canvas more frequently than the front, so this might be a hack that I use frequently. I also enjoyed the fact that I didn't have to remove it at all because it was on the back of the canvas. However, the watercolors kind of made it come off on its own. There's a little bit up here, but I really don't care how it looks because it's the back. Also, taking a look at using tea for the watercolors, this is how the front turned out. Like I did say earlier, I had to combine it with the watercolors to really make it show up, but a negative thing about using the tea is that it bled out. You can kind of see where the tea bled out on the canvas, and because the tea is colored, where it bled is also colored. And that doesn't happen with the watercolors because I paint just in this and then only water travels. So I think I'm gonna try to avoid tea unless I am coloring the entire surface, but I think it turned out okay. The slight tint is really not terribly obvious unless you look like super close. So, and lastly, overall, the canvases, I have never used one of these before. We usually just use the hoops, and I think I prefer the hoops. I couldn't tighten this piece gradually as I went, and so when it became a little bit saggy, I can't change that because it's already attached to the canvas. I also don't really like, because there is wood all the way around, that means my design can only go in the middle because reaching underneath where the frame is very difficult. But then you end up with this white border around it. So for a piece like this, where it is intended to be small, this might be perfect, but for a picture that you might want larger or to even go all the way to the edge, you can't really do that with these canvases. So I guess it's a toss-up. It kind of depends on the project. Overall, I really love the way that this piece turned out. I like the messy watercolors. I even like the slight tint from the tea. And I think this is just a really cute, simplistic design. Here are some shots of this piece outside in the natural light. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's craft. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, feel free to hit that like button or subscribe to the channel. I post crafting videos usually on Fridays. I also have links for my social media in the description box below, as well as all of the materials I used in this week's video. I'll see you guys all for the next one.